CNBC and TransLink have really dropped the ball 2 times within the past month, and the second topic in this video is what's really gonna propel TransLink into the global spotlight. Not too long ago, Coast Mountain was faced with the decision to operate Novabuses out of Surrey Yard in order to accelerate the retirement of the oldest CNG model buses in Port Coquitlam. Retiring the aging tanks on existing 18-year-old CNG buses over the diesel counterparts seems to be a top priority in the latest round of yard movements. For the longest time, Surrey has been a mainly New Flyer depot, and with the recent developments in arrivals and retirements, the Quebec buses will soon be a common sight on assignments such as the 502 Langley and 321 White Rock. All that and more coming right up. On this channel, we cover topics on public transit, mainly in the Metro Vancouver, BC area. So if you're interested, please drop a like, a comment, and please consider subscribing to the channel. With that out of the way, let's answer the question, how did we get here? TransLink is in the midst of replacing all the buses that were purchased for the Olympics, and that accounts for more than 800 buses in the current fleet. If you haven't watched my recent video about the LFS CNG, please go watch that video as it sets up much of the context for understanding where we ended up with Novas and Surrey. Anyways, the main point is that the backlog at New Flyer has been exacerbated by changing market conditions and the duopolies in Canada and the US. For TransLink, it's become harder and harder to A. Get a brand new 40-foot bus from New Flyer, and B. Carry on in its bus electrification endeavors. So why is Surrey getting Novabuses? Well, based on everything discussed beforehand, there became a point where there were no more New Flyer 40-footers to be sent in as replacements. The reason Richmond became a Novabus depot was because of the batch of 2018 suburban units. Right now, it seems like the integrity of the CNG tanks on the oldest buses are of the utmost priority. There are certain risks involved in keeping those tanks in service, albeit recertifying them for however long replacements are sent in. In this case, the depot upgrades at Port Coquitlam still need to be completed, so for the time being, these can only be replaced by New Flyer CNGs from Surrey. At the time of recording, 9 units have been sent over. There are 7 newer hybrids and 2 of the latest batch of CNGs. Aside from getting drivers familiar to the wheelchair setup, it seems that there is some testing to find out whether the depot prefers to have hybrid or CNG units, or a mix of both depending on what's economically viable for the fleet system-wide. But at the time of posting, it looks like Surrey will get the 17 hybrids in Hamilton, then it's either some more CNGs, or even more of the same hybrids currently based in Vancouver. But the most important thing here is that there are no more Excelsior 40-foot buses to cycle into Surrey and Poco. Aside from the trolleys, Surrey and Port Coquitlam have the oldest 40-foot standard local fleet, followed by Burnaby, and then Vancouver, Hamilton, and Richmond, each with their 2009 built units. And as we switch our attention to the trolleybuses, this is where things start to heat up. On the 3rd of March 2025, TransLink announced that it would be purchasing 107 40-foot trolleybuses from Polish manufacturer Solaris. The agency also announced additional options for a batch of 201 40-foot and 204 60-foot buses. In addition, the first bus is expected as soon as next year, when the oldest trolleybuses start hitting 20 years on the road. Now, my first thought is that we really haven't seen a European manufacturer break into the North American scene at this capacity, really since Seattle's German buses in the 1980s. France's Neoplan also had a market share in the 80s and 90s, and actually had a decent 20-year run with the American market. Despite New Flyer having a well-established trolleybus network in San Fran and Seattle, why is TransLink going with a European manufacturer? To preface this, there are a bunch of reasons why TransLink picked Solaris over New Flyer, and one reason alone isn't gonna explain this decision. Again, if you saw my video on the Novabus CNG, it was mentioned that the backlog sits at 14,000 units as of late last year, and it doesn't look to be going down anytime soon. Now, this seems to be just like an airline looking to get an A350 from Airbus and having to shell extra money to keep an older widebody in service for 2 to 3 years until delivery. In addition to the backlog of buses at New Flyer, another point it comes down to is the company's ability to handle a support network. We saw why Grand West and Proterra have virtually failed in North America at this point. When you have an insignificant market share, companies either produce more spare parts at an increased cost, or end up overproducing those parts as they sit in storage collecting dust. I think with Solaris, having an entirely new bus manufacturer in the North American market, especially one that has a strong support network to begin with, makes this point appealing to potential North American buyers. So really the question is, how much control does a company have in both manufacturing new buses and producing aftermarket parts? Another point worth bringing up is cost. News outlets and virtually everyone involved in the transit agency are wondering what Solaris offered compared to New Flyer. To preface this, the offer of Solaris came out to around 1.6 million Canadian per bus. Now how much would have New Flyer bid? And was there even a third bidder? I mean, that would be insane to think about if there was. Now keep in mind, last time this happened, SKODA placed a lower bid for the 2006 order, which it eventually lost due to TransLink's dissatisfaction with some of the specs on their proposal. The only difference these days is that Solaris and Coast Mountain actually underwent a trial in late summer 2023. Now although we don't have the exact details on how much the cost is on other bidders, the 2023 trial was extremely instrumental in determining the outcome in this order. Now let's read the room a little and discuss the Canada-US tariff war and how this relates to the Solaris order. I think that most people forget that New Flyer is just as much American as it is Canadian. Much like the rest of the auto industry, it's not uncommon for incomplete bus shells to be moved between the factories in Manitoba and Minnesota. So the talk of TransLink not going with a Canadian manufacturer isn't really a strong talking point, especially when you take a look at the actual manufacturing process. Even then, Quebec's Novabus does not produce trolleybuses. To their credit, however, TransLink does operate 15 battery electric buses from Novabus. I think two things to look out for here is 1, which tariffs are at play on this decision, and 2, how exactly the manufacturing process will play out in addition to the parts and supply network. And this might have a different impact on Philadelphia's trolleybuses as they use the same model as TransLink. Those are due for replacement around this time as well, and that opens the floor for SEPTA to piggyback off this order if they so choose. Lastly, let's take a look at some of the specs these trolleybuses will be equipped with. The first thing is that these buses will be equipped with TransLink's standard 2-door setup for 40-foot buses. In the guidelines for bus stops, there's a tidbit that mentions door clearance areas. But you decide to what extent the quote, "if it ain't broke, don't fix it," comes into play. Another point is that these buses are going to be equipped with Polish traction motors made by Medcom. The current fleet uses SKODA traction motors on both the standard and articulated units. So another guess is that this likely came to availability, cost, and performance. And let's not forget that these buses will be coming with in-motion charging technology. This essentially means that the buses will be equipped with a battery that will allow charging from the overhead wires. The off-wire distance for these buses looks to be about 20 kilometers give or take, and these will be useful especially by the time the Burrard Peninsula Area Transit Plan goes into effect in the 2030s. Now that looks to be it for this video. Solaris plans to hold a press conference for the entry into the North American market on the 12th of March this year, and I'll decide whether or not that will be a video worth uploading. Also from here on out, I think I'll be posting pretty much when something really big happens. I've been focusing on other hobbies and my Japan-Korea transit channel in the meantime. Anyways, consider subscribing if you're new, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!